an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the lives of Christopher Chant. What chapters did I do for this? 8, 9, and 10. In these chapters, Christopher discovers why he has been unable to do magic. And as much as I'm delighted that he has figured it out, and as much as I enjoyed getting to see him do some amazing shit, I also do feel kind of bad that he can't just be a professional cricket player. What are they called? Are they called cricketers? Do we have names for people? Footballers play soccer. Is it a cricketer? Is it a cricketer? I would like for him to be able to be magical and also play cricket. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Patricia for commissioning this episode. I have been really excited about getting to the point where he figures out what he can do. Because I have to be honest, it's not easy to write a character like Christopher Chant, who is simultaneously likable, talented, doesn't know he's talented, and also kind of mild in his way. And by mild, I mean, when we are inside his head, it's not like we're getting a lot of private thoughts too much of his. Like, he'll keep things to... We get a sort of distance from him. And he isn't somebody who acts out or particularly talks back until later on in this last chapter. And I feel like we are very used to, you know, especially in this era, we're very used to being on the side of characters who behave in ways a lot of the time that we wish we could behave. You know what I mean? Like, they do things that are kind of frowned on societally, but they are acting out our secret, like, fantasy about how we can behave. Like, recently I read Wishes and Wellingtons, which I really recommend. It was a super fun book. And it starts off with a young girl at a boarding school who is just insufferable. And, like, she's the kind of insufferable that, like, as an adult reading her, you're just like, girl, can you just not be a dick for like a second and maybe things would be better for you? But as a little kid, you would love to read about her because she does all the stuff that you wish you could do. Talking back to everybody, causing trouble. Anytime somebody starts to bully somebody else, she like gets in their face and like causes a scene. And Christopher Chant doesn't do any of that. And if you had told me that he was kind of ordinary, I would have expected to be bored by him, but I am not. I really enjoy this kid and I like want the best for him in a way that has not been true for this sort of character in a minute. So anyway, let's back it up. Let's see. We have chapter 8, which is the rest of spring term. Christopher went regularly to the Anywheres with Tacroy, but he did not try to go to one on his own. By now, Uncle Ralph seemed to have a whole round of experiments set up. Christopher met Tacroy in series 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and then in 8, 6, 4, and 2, always in that order, but not always in the same place or outside the same valley. So I'm super duper curious why that order and what exactly it is that he's working on. Because there are tons of packages and parcels going in and out of both of these worlds. And I have absolutely no idea what that's about, what he's like trying to... It feels like there has to be some sort of like huge nefarious experiment. And I have absolutely no theories about it. I really don't have a clue. I got nothing. And it says, in fact, the experiments had become so routine that they were not much of a change from school. Christopher thought of other things while he worked, just as he did in magic lessons and English and chapel at school. He asks, why don't we go to Series 11? Nobody goes to 11, Tucroy said shortly. Christopher could see he wanted to change the subject. He asked why. Because, said Tucroy, because they're peculiar, unfriendly people there, I suppose, if you can call them people. Nobody knows much about them because they make damn sure nobody sees them. And that's all I know, except that 11's not a series. There's only one world. Tucroy refused to say more than that, which was annoying, because Christopher had a strong feeling that Tucroy did know more. But Tucroy was in a bad mood that week. His grandmotherly lady had gone down with flu, and Tucroy was making do with the stern, flute-playing young lady. So, I am absolutely baffled by this. Some place where they don't let people see them, that they hide, that there isn't a series, that it's just the one world, and it's 11. I like, does the number have some sort of significance? Like, I really can't say. I really don't know. But I want to know so bad. And I genuinely, like, I'm sitting here trying to think of any theory, and I haven't got a one. But this leads to basically Christopher starting to get, one could say, a little pushy with Tucroy about meeting him in person. And I feel like I feel of two minds about this. On the one, I'm like, Christopher, I know that you think that this would be cool and everything, but Tucroy is like an adult person, and you only ever hang out together when you're in other worlds and you have a specific mission. Like, do you really think that y'all would just have fun hanging out? But on the other hand, I'm like, sort of viewing it the way that you do when you are at work and you meet somebody that you seem to get along really well with at work. You know that those jobs where you check the schedule and immediately check to see if so-and-so is working with you that night, because any time that they are off and you are on, it feels like the day is 3 times as long. And you do want to meet up with people like that outside of work. It's a natural thing to just want to be friends with them. And as we see later, the way that they connect over cricket winds up being something that they can actually like really be friendly about that has nothing to do with this world. But I had been theorizing that Tucroy was secretly his dad. And I have to take that back now, because Tucroy, like, it seems like because of how Christopher sees somebody walking down the street that looks just like Tucroy, either that was like some sort of weird illusion and that did not happen, or Tucroy that appears in this world looks exactly the same as the Tucroy in the real world, which means that it's not his dad. And, you know, when we hang out with his dad a couple of times, he doesn't seem like the kind of dude who has the imagination for this stuff, and he wouldn't be at all like, there would be no question in his mind that Christopher was able to do real magic if he was seeing what Christopher could do in terms of traveling and retrieving things and yada, yada, yada. So I take that all back. I have no idea who Tucroy could be. I don't remember if there is a character of that name in the previous book. Oh my God. What is it in... Damn it. Charmed Life. I was about to say Life Enchanted. No. But I really wonder, like, about the intimacy between the two of them, you know, like what exactly is going on there, and if they can maintain that and be friends later on, and what that would even look like because of the interference of his uncle, who is clearly using Christopher for something that he does not deign to let Christopher even know about. So anyway, I have a lot of like questions, but no answers for anything. And finally, there's this moment, guys, that's really, again, with Diana Wynne Jones, she just loves writing because of her own history, evidently, about kids that are sort of neglected. And there are, stories like Fire and Hemlock in which that neglect is aggressive. It's a kid that, like, her mother makes it clear she just would rather not have to worry about her or take care of her or have her in her life. This is a slightly more benign neglect. And I hesitate to even use that word, but it just doesn't feel quite as like mean-spirited or malicious as Fire and Hemlock did. This feels like a mother who just genuinely like is unconcerned and figures he can figure it out for himself. It doesn't feel specifically like she's blaming him for stuff going wrong in her life. Like, Fire and Hemlock, that definitely was a thing. But it says, there proved to be a muddle over the arrangements for the Easter holidays. Mama wrote and said he was to come to her in Genoa, but at the last moment she turned out to be going to Weimar instead, where there was no room for Christopher. He had to spend nearly a week at school on his own after everyone had gone home, while the school wrote to Uncle Charles, and Uncle Charles arranged for Papa's other brother, Uncle Conrad, to have him in 4 days' time. Meanwhile, since the school was closing, Christopher was sent to stay with Uncle Ralph in London. So this bit of neglect, of just being forgotten, or not even forgotten, she goes somewhere that there's no room for him, and it's just like, I don't know, we'll figure something out. This cuts so deep, things like this, And I have talked in previous episodes about suddenly, like, coming home after years of waiting for my parents to fucking divorce. I came home after my first year in college, and they had basically split up while I was gone, and they had each moved into 1-bedroom apartments, and there was nowhere for me to live. And I was old enough at the time that I could figure out something. I was 18, I believe. But it was so obviously not on their mind where I was going to go. And I had to figure it out. And my aunt and uncle stepped forward to take me in for a while. And I'm glad they did, and I'm thankful that that was available to me. But it was not a good situation. And I still really resent how it was simply not even mentioned before I came home that nobody really had a place for me, Like, it was just one of those of it really, I think what actually happened was that my father had, in the 1-bedroom apartment, it was like an apartment that was attached to the back of a church, and there was a weird basement area, and he had fixed up part of that basement area to be like a bedroom for me to stay in. And I think that he didn't want to admit that he had not provided a place. And so this like sad little bedroom I was supposed to really think was like meant for me, like he had taken me into consideration, except that it was still filled with like boxes, storage stuff, and I had to share space with like fucking seasonal decorations and stuff that the church owned. And it was super clear upon moving in that I was not expected to stay, that I was given this space until I found another place to go. And that still fucks me up a little bit, Like, I just really understand how he must have been feeling here when he's literally, like, at school alone. The only one that hasn't been provided for out of all of his classmates. He's the only one that his parents just did not seem worried at all. You know, the feeling of, did I do something to, like, be less important to my parents than my friends are to their parents? That's a really awful feeling of being sure that it's something about you. And for me, I think that feeling became, obviously they see that I am capable of taking care of myself, and that means that I don't need help or I don't need support. And this has become a sort of complex with me of being a control freak, of wanting to always be the one in charge of things. And I think that's why, because you cannot be completely forgotten about and disregarded if you are the one in charge of things. And I just, like, this whole juggling of where he's going to go and feeling like everybody is sort of putting themselves out to take care of you. The fact that he winds up with an uncle much the way that I did, even though it's just for the Easter break, it still was, like, too familiar, and it was just really upsetting. And then he gets to the house anyway, and, like, Uncle Ralph isn't even there, and half the house is, like, closed up and locked up. And he just winds up spending a lot of his time wandering around London, which I have been to London, and there are much worse ways to spend your time. So this is when he thinks he spots Croix, and he yells for, like, his name, and it doesn't seem like Croix hears him, and he hurries after him and runs around the corner, and when he comes around, Croix is gone. And I really wonder if, like, Croix projected himself there. Maybe that wasn't him in body, but there, like, Croix is vehemently denying later that he had this encounter. And I don't really know, like, it doesn't feel like he's, I don't know. It doesn't feel like he's lying, but I can't think that this was, like, a coincidence or somebody was projecting Croix. Like, I don't know. I want to believe, I guess it comes down to, that Croix wouldn't lie to Christopher. He can be evasive and he can, like, tell him half-truths or just be like, I'm not allowed to share all of this with you. But outright lying, I just want to believe he wouldn't be willing to do. So that's probably just me. And when he's goes and stays with the other uncle for a while, at Uncle Conrad's. Uncle Conrad, it's his father's brother. And that whole family has a bunch of magic and are very disdainful of Christopher because he can't do any, apparently. And his cousin Francis is a little shit and uses magic to kind of knock Christopher off his horse, although he doesn't say that is what he's done. But I guess he does that to test and see if Christopher will magically defend himself from this happening. And he says, "Can't do magic, can you?" Francis said, looking smugly down at Christopher from the great height of his trim bay gelding. "I'm not surprised. It's your father's fault for marrying that awful Argent woman. No one in my family has anything to do with your father now." Since Christopher was fairly sure that Francis had used magic to bring him off the pony, there was not much he could do but clench his teeth and feel that Papa was well shot of this particular branch of the chants. It was a relief to go back to school again. And it then says it was more than a relief. It was cricket season. Christopher became obsessed with cricket almost overnight. Now, I would like to just, go on the record as saying that cricket seems super duper boring. like, just, it reminds me of a slower, more ponderous version of like baseball. And baseball is also super duper boring. There are moments in baseball that are fun. There are occasional like games that can be somewhat high energy throughout. And it's certainly not even as bad as like American football when there's tons of stops and starts, which I just find tedious. But really, if I'm going to watch a sport, give me hockey, give me boxing. I like fighting, really, is what it comes down to. Or even soccer. But, you know, soccer, honestly, the field's just too goddamn big. The field needs to be smaller. Too spread out. Everything goes too slowly that way. But anyway, yeah, the only context that I have for cricket is Midsummer Murders. And there is an episode that focuses on a cricket team, and the inspector plays the referee, basically. And for some reason, the referees dress like dentists with fishing hats on. And I really thought that was like a weird thing in the show until I looked it up, and it turns out that no, they just dress like that, which is crazy. They have like these white long-sleeved like jackets that come down to like knee length, and basically kind of a Kangol that's also white. It's just, cricket is bizarre. It's just a weird sport to me. I don't understand it. But Christopher loves it, and he is just so determined to play it professionally and for this to be his entire life. And it's sort of precious the way that he throws himself into it. And he says to himself that he is going to give up on his mother's plans for him to go into society. It says it was like being released from a vow. He was quite surprised to find out how determined and ambitious he was. He and O'Neill, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, practiced all day, and Fenning, who was no good really, was persuaded to run after the balls. In between, they talked cricket, and at night Christopher had normal ordinary dreams all about cricket. It seemed quite an interruption on the first Thursday, when he had to give up dreams of cricket and meet Tacroy in Series 5. So this is when he asks Tacroy, "Did I see you?" Tacroy says no. And he's so distracted thinking about all of this and then thinking about cricket that he drops a bundle. It fell half through Tacroy and slapped to the ground, where it lay leaking an even fishier smell than before. "Pooh," said Christopher. "What is this stuff?" "No idea," said Tacroy. "I'm only your uncle's errand boy." "What's the matter? Your mind's somewhere else tonight?" "Sorry," Christopher said, collecting the bundle. "I was thinking of cricket." Tacroy's face lit up. "Are you a bowler or a batsman?" "Batsman," said Christopher. "I want to be a professional." "I'm a bowler myself," said Tacroy. "Slow leg spin, and though I say it myself, I'm not half bad. I play quite a lot for... well, it's a village team, really, but we usually win. I usually end up taking 7 wickets, and I can bat a bit, too. What are you, an opener?" "No, I fancy myself as a stroke player," Christopher said. Guys, if you all just could see how my eyes glazed over... Oh, Lord, who in hell cares? But I don't begrudge her writing this. This feels like a real conversation. It just feels like a real conversation that I don't give a shit about. Tacroy several times tried to demonstrate his skill by picking up a pebble, but he could not get firm enough to hold it. So they start doing all of these little coaching sessions every time they get breaks between doing what they're here to do. And he starts to think, maybe I can get onto the school team, which is sort of adorable that he first was like, I'm going to be a professional. And then he's like, maybe I can get on the school team. That's the second thought that he has. It's the professional one's no big deal. The school team, that's a challenge. So this all starts going this comes to a grinding halt. And this is really something. Tacroy tells Christopher, can you meet me in Series 10 next Thursday? Someone seems to be trying to spoil your uncle's experiments, so we have to change the routine. Now, I really want to know what that's about. Who is trying to spoil his experiments? Why would they be willing to do that? What does spoiling mean? Like, what happened? How did he decide that that's what someone's trying to do? And Christopher, like Series 10, which is where Takroy asked him to meet him, is where the goddess is that he has said that he would bring more books to. But he has been so busy with doing all of this stuff with cricketing that he has not gone and brought her anymore. And he is sort of afraid to set foot in Series 10 and find out that, like, she can tell he's been there and didn't keep up his end of the deal. But he goes anyway, and it turns out that they're going to a different section of Series 10 than where she is. And it says the place beyond the New Valley was nothing like as primitive and heathen-seeming as the place where the goddess lived. It was a vast dockside with tremendous cranes towering overhead. Some of the biggest ships Christopher had ever seen, enormous rusty iron ships, very strangely shaped, were tied up to cables so big that he had to step over them as if they were logs. So he's working with, like, packing something up on this dock. And a huge hook from a crane swings into his head, and he wakes up in his room. And he still has not made the connection here that whatever happens to him in one of these other worlds is echoed in the world that he lives in. Because we, you know, from the knowledge that we have from Charmed Life, part of the deal is that when you're the only version, there isn't a copy of you in other series, then that effect has to go somewhere. It doesn't, like, that's the whole thing of why he has 9 lives to begin with, is because there aren't copies of him anywhere else. So when he gets hurt and killed, that effect, I would think, and I have no idea if this is true, but I would be very, very excited if I was able to, like, test this out. I wonder if he got hurt and he went back to his own world and there was a copy of him in that world. Maybe the copy in that world would sustain the damage instead of him. But because there's no other copies, whatever that ripple effect is follows him back to his own world. So this thing busts his head in, but he's not even aware that happened. His head just sort of aches when he wakes up. And in the morning, he didn't even have a headache. He forgot about it. And he goes out to play cricket with his friends, and O'Neill has been, like, he grabbed the bat and doesn't want to give it up. There was a silly laughing tussle, which ended when O'Neill swung the bat around in a playful, threatening circle. The bat met Christopher's head with a heavy thunk. It hurt. He remembered hearing several other distinct cracks just over his left ear, as if the bones of his skull were breaking up like an ice puddle. Then, in a way that was remarkably like the night before, he knew nothing at all for quite a time. When he came around, he knew it was much later in the day. Though the sheet had somehow got over his face, he could see late evening light coming in through a window high up in one corner. He was very cold, particularly his feet. Someone had obviously taken his shoes and socks off to put him to bed, but where had they put him? The window was in the wrong place for the dormitory, or for any other room he had slept in, for that matter. He pushed the sheet off and sat up. It was no wonder he felt cold. He was only wearing underclothes. So Christopher fucking died and then got brought to the morgue. So this is like a whole other situation. What happened with him getting stabbed through the chest with the curtain rod was like an accident that would absolutely have been fatal had somebody not acted swiftly and helped him out. Like, he would have actually died and then had to come back. But I thought at the time, because there was his uncle sort of Plant, the woman who was the most recent nanny or maid or whatever it is they called her, governess, the last governess, right? I think that's what he called her. She is standing there and she's like saying some incantations and some magic and sort of credits herself with being able to keep him from dying. When I read that initially, I thought she was mistaken and that she actually wasn't great at magic, but it was just that he has 9 lives and so it didn't kill him even though it should have. But now I'm realizing that's not really how it works. He actually does die, but then he returns to his body and his body has healed itself. So he wakes up in this fucking morgue and he has to like go and like find somebody to help him out, but the door is locked, which leads to one of the best, like, I have talked before, I think, about how in Kindle books it will show you something that has been highlighted a bunch of times. It'll have it highlighted in like a dashed line instead, and it'll say like 235 highlights or 690 highlights. This one, it's a lower number, it's 37, but they highlighted for half an hour after that. The hospital was in total confusion while everyone tried to catch a 5-foot corpse clothed mostly in a flying sheet, which raced up and down the corridors, shrieking that it was missing cricket practice. And finally, the doctor is just like, dude, what the fuck is going on? I saw your head. I examined you. You were not just dead. He says, your head was like a run-over pumpkin, which is vivid. That is a provocative image. So the fact that this kid is just up walking around and there's not an injury to be seen, it's just like nobody can fucking understand it. And this leads to an argument between his mother and father, and she's trying to tell her, I'm pretty sure he's got more than one life. And he says something about, he has more than one life, Miranda. It explains things about his horoscope that I have always puzzled. And she cuts him off and says, oh, fudge to your wretched horoscopes. Be quiet. Now, when first reading this, I am not aware of why she's quite reacting to this way about the horoscopes thing. Because, it's one thing to just be like, I don't believe in horoscopes. But this is a world in which magic exists and is practiced and taught in school. So horoscopes existing and people believing in them seems like it would just be par for the course. And then you come to find out later that his dad used his horoscope to decide where to invest like all their money and basically lost it all because of paying too much attention to the horoscopes. So he's like, him bringing this up to Christopher's mother is a particular sore point and probably is something that he should not have said out loud, honestly. Like, if I were her, I would react the same way at this point. And he says, I shall not be quiet when I know the truth. I've done what needs to be done and sent a telegram to DeWitt about him. And she is really mad that he did that without even asking her. I shall not lose Christopher to your gloomy connivings, Cosimo. Which, what does that mean? Gloomy connivings? Like, what does she think he's doing exactly? It sounds like there's like a conspiracy or something. So when he comes back, there are a bunch of people hanging out around his body, looking at him and examining him. And this dude, DeWitt, tells his dad that I understand why you asked me to come here. And it makes sense that you would think this. But as far as I can tell, only one life is present. I'm not convinced at all. His mother, for her part, is very glad to hear this. I had thought for a moment that dreadful old man was going to get hold of you, and I would never have forgiven your papa. Never. I don't want you to grow up into a boring, law-abiding policeman sort of person, Christopher. Mama wants to be proud of you. So I guess this is really pointing to his mother being a lot more like the other, what do you call it? The other witches and wizards. Are they called, or are they all just called magicians, wizards? Sorry, guys. Patricia's saying, note, this is when Christopher comes back from visiting another world. Yeah, that's true. Sleepwalking? I don't know what you're talking about, sleepwalking. Oh, that's what you're calling it when he's visiting another world, is he's sleepwalking. Okay, I like that. Yeah. But I'm guessing that she would have been one of the people that was like totally okay with sacrificing Cat to make sure that everybody was able to access all the magic and universes that they wanted without having to be subject to someone's laws and the Crestomancy's rule and whatever. It sounds like she's more that type, that she feels like we're magic, we should be able to do whatever we want. What gives this one dude the right to tell us yes or no about things and to have the final say? And his dad is obviously somebody who seems to understand the need for this and wants there to be a little bit more order. But yeah, you're right. He hears his parents like arguing, and he purposely leaves and goes, it says, to the place between. He found a new valley there, leading to somewhere where there was some kind of circus going on. Nobody in that world spoke English, but Christopher got by quite well, as he had often done before, by pretending to be deaf and dumb. When he came slipping back, the room was full of soberly dressed people who were obviously just leaving. So, yeah, I'm wondering if the fact that he was gone because he was visiting another world is what led to the false read of him seeming to only have the one life. But anyway, chapter 9, he goes back to school, and everybody is just totally falling all over themselves, giving him all this attention because he's like a miracle. People saw him die. Onir, who is the one that killed him with the bat, it was manslaughter, it was not, but still is almost in tears apologizing to him, which, like, you would be, right? They were basically best friends. And Onir thought that he had killed the kid. He must have been a fucking wreck, I'm surprised he didn't actually cry. Almost in tears? You should be in actual tears, dude. That was the only thing which made Christopher uncomfortable. Otherwise, he basked in the attention he got. He insisted on playing cricket just as before, and he could hardly wait for next Thursday to come so that he could tell to Croy all his adventures. But it all gets thwarted, because, due to everything that has happened, his father has decided to pluck him out of school and send him to a private tutor. And he is disgusted. Like, Christopher is just so horrified that nobody gives a shit what he wants to do. Nobody even asked him. He doesn't even get a chance to say goodbye to his friends before he's like dragged off. And I was just like, this is just unconscionable. It seems that the great Dr. Pawson will not agree that you might remain until the end of term. These Cambridge dons, we know what they are, headmaster. He and the head smiled at one another rather falsely. Matron is packing you a bag now, said the head. In due course, your box and your school report will be sent after you. Now we must say goodbye, as I gather your train leaves in half an hour. So he takes off, tells his father about joining cricket and how he was trying out for that. He says, your future is more important than cricket. And Christopher says, my future is cricket. And really feels like this is the first time he has said this out loud to an adult, and is feeling a little bit daring that he is finally admitting that this is a goal of his that is not something that either of his parents ever wanted for him. And rather than like getting mad or even laughing at him, his father is just like, well, once I wanted to be an engine driver. And then he says, these whims pass. And there is nothing quite as infuriating when you are Christopher's age as being assured that something that you are taking very seriously, that you love and believe in and are devoting tons of energy to, is just a whim. Like, honestly, just, oh God, I'd be so irritated. So he asks, why is this so important? And his father tells him, Dr. Pawson is the most eminent diviner in the country. I had to pull a few strings to get him to take you on at such short notice, but when I put the case to him, he himself said that it was urgent not to give DeWitt time to forget about you. DeWitt will revise his opinion of you when he finds you have a gift for magic after all. And of course, Christopher's just like, I don't, though. What are you talking about? I don't have a gift for magic. And he's like, no, you definitely have to. Because of everything that has happened to you, for whatever reason, it's not coming out. And that's what we're going to find out. And he tells him, your gift should be enormous. I'm an enchanter, so are both my brothers, and your mama, this I will grant her, is a highly gifted sorceress. And her brother, that wretched Argent fellow, is an enchanter too. So that's what they call him. Because, yeah, I was saying wizards and witches, and it seems like there's a couple, like, there's a variety of ways to call this, but enchanter and sorceress is the ones that are used here. So we'll go with that. Papa was truly an enchanter. Christopher resentfully searched Papa for the signs of power and riches that went with an enchanter, and the signs did not seem to be there. Papa struck him as threadbare and mournful. The cuffs of his frock coat were worn, and his hat looked dull and unprosperous. Even the black whiskers were thinner than Christopher remembered, with streaks of gray in them. There's a hierarchy of magic in Crestomancy books. Warlock and Witch are lowest. Then I think comes Magician. Oh, I didn't remember this, Patricia. Then Sorcerer, Sorceress. Okay. Is that something that they say in the last book and I just forgot about it? And the highest are Enchanters / Enchantress. I think it's in an extra. Oh, okay. All right, interesting. But the fact was, enchanter or not, Papa had snatched him out of school in the height of the cricket season, and from the way the head had talked, he was not expected to go back. So they go and see Dr. Pawson. He says, his father is saying you were certified dead by 2 doctors and a bunch of other people. I came to identify your body, and you are totally fine. So, yeah, there has to be something going on, and he's going to look at you and figure out what it is. And then he's like, I heard about an accident involving a curtain rod. Did that kill you, or was that like a mortal injury? And Christopher's like, yeah, I kind of think so. And his father's like, yep, this all makes sense. This tracks. He says, Monsieur DeWitt is the strongest enchanter in the world. He has 9 lives. 9, Christopher. This makes him strong enough to control the practice of magic throughout this world and several others. The government has given him that task. For this reason, you will hear some people call him the Crestomancy. The Post bears that title. Now, I'm going to ask here, Crestomancy, like when you say it out loud, I thought that summoned him. And I'm wondering if that is a thing that, only worked in that previous book because that particular Crestomancy decided that it should, or if we're just going to forget that was a thing, or what here. But Christopher goes in and meets this guy, Dr. Pawson, who is a fat man who never leaves this chair. It's like he magically hovers it everywhere. And is very sort of aggressive and like bombastic. And Christopher winds up realizing that Dr. Pawson likes it when you sort of push back at him and stand up to him a little bit, which I think is really kind of adorable in its way. And Pawson can tell that there is something like holding back Christopher. I don't know how he can tell, but he's called a diviner. And so I imagine that he can sort of see that there is something, repressing whatever is trying to come out. So he says, what's your problem? State your problem. I can't do magic, sir. So can't a lot of people. Some are born that way. Do better than that. Show me. Don't do some magic and let me see. I love this. And he tries and he's like, he says at first, I can't not do something I can't do. Of course you can. That's the essence of magic. Get on with it. Mirror on the table beside you. Levitate it and be quick about it. So Christopher tries and nothing happens. And he says, all right, don't do it again, which I love that wording. And finally he does. And this guy says, empty your pockets, empty your pockets. And he tries again, doesn't work. He's like, there's something else. Clearly there's something else. Take your tie pin off. And then he's like, oh, and take your ridiculous thing out of your mouth. What even is that? To stop my teeth growing crooked, said Christopher rather huffily. Much as he hated the tooth brace, he hated even more being criticized about it. What's wrong with crooked teeth? Howled Dr. Pawson, and he bared his own teeth. Christopher rather started back from the sight. Dr. Pawson's teeth were brown, and they lay higgledy-piggledy in all directions like a fence trampled by cows. Oh my God, that is a fucking description, you guys. That's really awful sounding. Jesus Christ. Christopher ground his teeth, which felt quite straight by contrast and very smooth without the brace, and turned to the mirror again. Once more he looked into it, once more said the words, and once more raised his arms aloft. And as his arms went up, he felt something come loose with them. Something come loose with a vengeance. Everything in the room went upwards except Christopher in the mirror. Except Christopher, the mirror, the tie pin, the tooth brace, and the money. These slid to the floor as the table surged upwards, but were collected by the carpet which came billowing up after it. Christopher hastily stepped off the carpet and stood watching everything soar around him. All the clocks, several tables, chairs, rugs, pictures, vases, ornaments, and Dr. Pawson, too. He and his armchair both went up majestically like a balloon and bumped against the ceiling. The ceiling bellied upwards, and the chandelier plastered itself sideways against it. From above came crashings, shrieks, and an immense airy grinding. Christopher could feel that the roof of the house had come off and was on its way to the sky, pursued by the attics. It was an incredible feeling. "Stop that!" Dr. Pawson roared. Christopher guiltily took his arms down. So everything comes smashing to the floor. It all breaks. The roof is not on properly. Pipes are breaking. It's just pandemonium. And Christopher is kind of low-key laughing to himself. He holds it in, but he really wants to. And I love this moment. I love that he does this, and it's so dramatic because his power is just ridiculous. And Dr. Pawson's mother comes in and is like, "Who the fuck?" And then she sees him and she's like, "Oh, it was you. Well, knock it off. Don't do it again." I love it. So he realizes that it's the silver, and you have to put everything back, Chant. And this is just what Christopher had to do. For the rest of the morning, he went around the house, up to every floor, and then outside into the garden, while Dr. Pawson trundled beside him in his armchair and showed him how to cast holding spells to stop the house falling down. Dr. Pawson never seemed to leave that armchair. In all the time Christopher spent with him, he never saw Dr. Pawson walk. Around midday, Dr. Pawson set his chair gliding into the kitchen, where a cookmaid was sitting dolefully in the midst of smashed buttercrocks, spilled milk, bits of basin and dented saucepans, and dabbing at her eyes with her apron. "Not hurting there, are you? I put a holder on first thing to make sure the range didn't burst and set the house on fire, that sort of thing." So this goes, he has to go to every single individual room. Put the eggs together, Chant. You need the spell to raise them first, then the dirt dispeller you used on the milk. Then you can start the mending spell. Which is just so wild. He can pick up a liquid off the floor, clean it all off, and drop it slowly back into a bottle, which he put back together also. That is the coolest. Could you imagine being able to do shit like that? I would just never... You couldn't talk to me. I'd be impossible. And Christopher is like managing all of this remarkably quickly, but also is like exhausted by the end of the day. It says that he thought he had learned more practical magic that day than he had in 2.5 terms at school. Practical magic. I wonder if that holds up. So he goes home, talks to his dad, or he goes back to the room. He doesn't go home. And he tells his dad about the silver. And his dad is like, oh, shit. I think that's my fault. He's like, I cast your horoscope when you were born. And it said that silver would mean danger or death to you. So I cast a spell so that silver would always be neutral. And I'm realizing maybe I got that wrong. And he stops and thinks argent means silver. And that's his mother and Uncle Ralph's last name. And he says, could I have got it wrong? Well, it is too late to do anything about that except to warn you again to have nothing to do with Uncle Ralph. And Christopher doesn't want to give up Uncle Ralph. Like, it's not even that he doesn't believe his dad so much as he underestimates the danger, I think, you know? So I very foolishly lost your mama's money and my own by investing it where I thought my horoscopes told me to. Horoscopes are tricky, particularly with money. Be that as it may, I'm finished. I regard myself as a failure. You are all I have left to live for, my son. Any success I am to know, I shall know through you. If Christopher had not been so tired, he would have found this decidedly embarrassing. Even through his weariness, he found he was annoyed that he was expected to live for Papa and not on his own account. Would it be fair, he wondered, to use magic to make yourself a famous cricketer? So yeah, I can't help but agree, you know, like, being like, any success I have will be through you is a fucked up thing to say to your kid. And his dad is like trying his best to figure out what's going on with him, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's got like his best interests at heart, really. But that's the end of chapter 9. Oh, and there's a bunch of comments here. Oh, Patricia found the thing. Witch warlock. Practitioners of witchcraft, weakest forms, rely primarily upon ingredients. Additionally, they can be further ranked according to what kind of license they have. Necromancer. Does not involve raising the dead, merely a step up from witchcraft. Henry Nostrum is a necromancer. Okay. Wizard. Practitioners of wizardry. Magician. Practitioners of magician's magic. I wonder what the hell the difference is there. Sorcerer. Sorceress. Practitioners of sorcery, which seems to involve using personal inanimate objects, such as a handkerchief, as a focus. Enchanter, enchantress, practitioners of enchanter's magic. Notable that it does not require ingredients. Instead, enchanters are capable of willing their magic to shape reality. 9-lived enchanter, the most powerful users of magic in Series 12, among the most powerful in any other world. As their name suggests, 9-lived enchanters have 9 lives. This happens when a person's doubles are either not born or die at birth, and all of those 8 additional lives and their latent talents collect in one person. All right, cool. Thank you for that, Patricia. Okay, so chapter 10 is just a ton of working to fix everything that he fucked up when he just basically lifted the entire house off the ground. And I love this opening. Dr. Possum was sitting in his armchair in the hall waiting for him. To work, Chant. Really, sir? I thought we were going to have a lazy day like yesterday. The strange thing about Dr. Possum was that he did not mind this kind of remark in the least. Once Christopher got used to him, he discovered that Dr. Possum rather liked people to stand up to him. And once he had discovered that, Christopher found that he did not really hate Dr. Possum, or only in the way you hate a violent thunderstorm you happen to be caught in. He found he quite liked rebuilding the house, though perhaps the thing which he really liked was working magic that actually did something. Every spell he did had a real use. That made it far more interesting than the silly things he had tried to learn at school, and the hard work was much easier to bear when he was able to say things to Dr. Pawson that would have caused masters at school to twist his ears and threaten to cane him for his insolence. And he tries this at one point on Dr. Pawson's mom, and she totally is not here for it. Like, because at one point he's joking around because Dr. Pawson is like, fix this chimney. And it's like the third or fourth time he's told him to do it. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Should I make it gold for you, too? And Pawson's just like, oh, shut up. But when he says something to Mrs. Pawson, would you like it studded with diamonds, or shall I just give it a posy of roses in the bottom? Thank you, child, said Mrs. Pawson. The posy of roses, please. I think that's a charming idea. Dr. Pawson, sitting by in his armchair, was full of glee at Christopher's discomfiture. Sarcasm never pays, Chant, he bawled. Roses require a creation spell. Listen carefully. So I just love that. I love that moment. And that it teaches him a whole other thing, the creation spell, you know. And Christopher practices all kinds of stuff. It says every morning while he was walking on the Trumpington Road, he tried to coax the trees that lined it into a different pattern. He got so good at it that before long he could shunt them up the road in a long line and crowd them into a wood at the end. In the evenings, tired though he was, he could not resist trying to make the lodging house supper taste better. But food magic was not easy. What do they put in sausages these days? Papa remarked. These taste of strawberry. Then came a morning when Dr. Pawson shouted from his chair in the hall, Right, Chant, from now on you finish the mending in the afternoons, and in the mornings we teach you some control. So he starts taking these lessons about how to create a wind but keep other, he says, without moving a blade of grass. So basically having the wind without it just affecting everything around you, being able to direct the energy at an exact thing, which is really interesting. And even though it's not quite as much fun, it's also much more restful than doing what he did, and it's sort of like meditative. So Christopher sort of likes it in its way. And finally, it turns out that he is going to be taken to DeWitt again. And he writes a letter to Uncle Ralph because his father did not expressly forbid it, even though he fucking knows. He knows this is a bad idea, but he goes ahead and fucking does it anyway like a dum-dum. And obviously Uncle Ralph tells his mother, and when his father gets a letter from the mom, Papa threw the letter on the fire and fetched his hat. Christopher, I shall be coming with you to Dr. Pawson's today. So they head over there, and there is this crazy wind. And it practically knocks Christopher over. And it's clear that she's trying to keep that. She's, I think, trying to summon Christopher to her and keep him from reaching Dr. Pawson's. But, you know, they're able to get to the door. It's just that once they actually get there, opening it and getting through is the challenge. And he wants to, retaliate by using his own magic. And his father says a gentleman never works magic against a woman, particularly his own mama. Gentlemen, it seemed to Christopher, made things unreasonably difficult for themselves in that case. Which, yeah, why not? Not wanting to be violent to somebody, especially men tending towards being more physically strong than women, that's one thing. But magic, a woman can be as strong as a man easily. So there's no real reason why that has to be a rule. And finally, he made himself very heavy just in time. He did it because it was a contest, really, because he did not like being on the losing side. He would not at all have minded seeing Mama, but he very much hoped Papa would not notice the rather large dents his feet had made in the ground just outside the gate. So I'm glad that he went ahead and just did that shit anyway. And I wonder what his mother is going to think about it. So this is when he finally goes and meets the Crestomancy. And this whole house is kind of sober and subdued and not very exciting or it just doesn't have, when you hear that you're going to meet a Crestomancy, after having hung out with what I assume is Christopher as an adult Crestomancy, he has this place like, that's kind of wild, and he dresses in bright colors and everything. And instead they have this like complete opposite, but he winds up like DeWitt takes a look at him, and first he has to get into this like what do you call it, pentagram that's drawn on the floor, and DeWitt doesn't even come over himself. He sends over like another dude, Flavian, and Pawson's really resentful. I'm totally out of time here, but I'm going to do it anyway. Pawson's really resentful because he's like, I examined him already. Y'all don't need to do this again. And Flavian's like, sorry, this is how it works. And he tries to be like, well, he only has 7 lives. And Pawson's like, you fucking idiot, because he lost 2. Do you have any information at all? And finally, this dude is like, all right, fine. Yeah, I guess we'll take him. And Christopher just has to say goodbye to his father and Pawson with like no notice at all. And Pawson's mom rolls up, and she's got this amazing scarf that she made that's got protection spells knitted into it that she drapes around his neck. And she sends him through, and it's like kind of sad how abrupt this all is. And when he goes up to see DeWitt is straight up like, so by the way, your family's trash. The Chants give themselves out as a race of respectable enchanters, but they produce a black sheep every generation, while the Argents, though admittedly gifted, are the kind of people I would not nod to in the street. These traits have come out in both your parents. I gather your father is bankrupt and your mother a contemptible social climber. Wow. Okay. Anger flared through Christopher. Oh, thank you, sir, he said. There's nothing I like more than a polite, warm welcome like that. And this dude is genuinely like, why are you acting like this? I'm trying to be honest with you. What is the problem? Like, he just doesn't get it. And he tells him, like, I don't want to be Crestomancy. And DeWitt's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, you probably don't. But guess what? I didn't either, and yet here I am. There's just a lot of work to be done, and once you learn what it is, you kind of feel like you have to do it. And he has this assistant, Miss Rosalie, bring Christopher to his room, and she says on the way that like they really didn't know how to make him feel welcome, so they tried their best. And it's this gloomy fucking room that has like a couple of sad, let's see. There was a teddy bear on the shelf, a game of snakes and ladders, and a copy of the Arabian Nights with all the dirty bits taken out. He put them in a heap on the floor and jumped on them. He knew he was going to hate Crestomancy Castle. And that is the end of the chapter. So, sorry about that, Christopher. That sucks. But, what can you do? Am I right? I just am eager to see what he makes of all of this. And I kind of want him to play cricket again. I'm just saying. Let the kid have some fun. All right. I have to wrap this. Thank you again to Patricia for commissioning these. I've been really enjoying this book. And I will see you again soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.